Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm Cathy Marshall, SDSA. Joining me today are set decorator Teri and production designer Happy Massee to discuss their collaboration on the exciting new film, Armageddon Time. Teri and Happy, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
This film, which so far has been nominated for the Gotham Awards Best Screenplay, Armageddon Time is a deeply personal story by director James Gray. Set in 1980, I believe, in Queens, New York. It's about the complexity of a multiracial friendship and the generational pursuit of the American dream. The film features an all-star cast, including Anthony Hopkins, Anne Hathaway, and Jeremy Strong. But it centers on two young friends, Paul and Johnny, as they try to navigate the experience of adolescent racism, prejudice of the 80s, and what happened to be an election year in 1980. So my question is, how was the concept presented to you both, and what kind of research did you deal with these topics visually through the sets and the locations?
I grew up in that period, and I grew up not too far from where James Gray grew up. So I was pretty familiar, and as a first generation immigrant, I was very familiar with a lot of the themes of the script, not to mention the interiors. That really, informed, my vision of the film.
No, and I was going to say pretty much the same thing. I mean, I've been asked this question many times, what were your references, your influences and all of that. And it's basically, I moved to New York in 1979. So right, at this time, I moved to Manhattan, not Queens. So I was less familiar with James's world, but I still was very familiar with New York, and I was able to sort of tap into my own personal experiences. James's world and the worlds that he describes and he films they're timeless. This movie, I feel like, James, was very helpful in that he had a lot of references. He gave us a couple hundred slides that we transferred, digitized, whatever we did, and we used them for our references for his house, because it's this one being autobiographical. So we used all these pictures, all these references that he gave us as our our template, our palette, and and we went from there. And if it was something, if we could find, like, we found the same chandelier that was above his dining room table, which was the one that was in his house. We found the exact same one. Otherwise, wallpapers and all of that, we just found similar things, and we just built, a world. The wallpapers are, I don't know that he necessarily had striped wallpapers in his dining room, but whatever we picked wasn't far off from what his dining room looked like. Teri, James, and I, are sort of from the same generation. So there's, especially James and I, but also me and Teri. I mean, Teri and James only met for the first time on this movie, whereas I've known him for, close to 15 years. But we have an understanding, we get each other creatively. So, it wasn't that, on this one in particular, because we were so rushed once the movie got the green light, we didn't have that much time to really sit down and go through the usual process. We sort of had to sort of rush through it. And because of the understanding that we all three had, it just sort of fell into place quite naturally,
Also, James had called out all kinds of details, details that weren't in, in his photographs. Things like the China pattern, things like a baseball cast iron bank that he had. All kinds of little details like that, which I think really helped to lend authenticity to the sets.
Yeah, I think he was quoted at one point about how the film was kind of a unique, and it was nearly a complete recreation of his childhood home. He said, we copied as much as we could the cheesy hi-fi system, the green carpet, the green and turquoise sofa blue pattern, the plates were some of the plates we had, the dining room table, the weird mix of Danish modern and Ethan Allen furniture, the rocking chair in Paul's bedroom, the no spanking zone sticker that he drew, Reggie Jackson, Muhammad Ali, all these references that he grew up with in his childhood. So that must have been a challenge to shop for, replicate, and incorporate.
It was a really fun project to do in that respect, just to go out and look for the things, and, James is very detailed oriented, so am I, so is Teri. So it wasn't, it's just a matter of digging, and finding, the right thing, and if it wasn't specifically what he had asked for, if it was close enough, it kind of worked. I mean, the thing that was important for us was, I didn't want to sort of, design a set and then have the crew walk in, and I wanted to design something or create a world that James would walk in and feel at home, feel like he had landed in his house, just so he'd be comfortable with his actors, and just I kind of wanted him just to, naturally or instinctively go to a drawer looking for something and finding that thing that he was looking for, and have it be there. That's how we designed the whole house with that intention.
So the family home is a big part of the movie, and it's kind of both an anchor and a compass for the story. And the photos you provided, which were great, there was believe a location you found that was an amazing house, probably I think in New Jersey, that you converted into his childhood home with the interiors and the rooms, which were amazing. Did you do any stage sets that kind of went with this house so that you could get more people and equipment in to film it, or was everything shot in that location?
No, everything was shot. I mean, the whole house, we actually used 3 houses for Paul's house. We used this house for the interior, and then we used 2 other houses for the exteriors. And we shot everything in here, much to the chagrin of our cinematographer, who always likes to have more room than he has. But
Right.
James was actually happy that we were working in a very constricted area, because it just felt, more like what he grew up in. Otherwise, no, we didn't shoot anything on stage, but we shot at the Bayonne High School, and basically we used that school for, I think, 5 other locations. So I always say that, yeah, our Bayonne was not only our school, but it was also a stage where we built a bunch of sets.
As decorators, we often have to create time changes throughout the film, and that somehow make the set reflect that. But this story took place in only 2 months, and the key set being the family home. So we live with this family in every room, every aspect of the house, the kids' bedroom, the dining room, the living room, that great kitchen. Can you talk about some of the subtle changes you made to create different moods to reflect the progression of the story, even though it took place over a short period of time? Did you work closely with the director of photography for lighting choices? What was your thought process on this?
Well, we always had a lighting kit, like for every set. So we did work closely with the cinematographer. As is often the case, a lot of the practicals do a lot of the lighting. In terms of the passage of time, I'd say that happened a lot in the school, with the different things that were on the bulletin boards, but not so much in the house.
No, I agree. I mean, it's literally 2.5 months
Mhm.
the movie takes place. In this case, nothing in the house really changes. You've got the meals, you've got just different days, different weeks, but otherwise the house itself never changed. But to address, the lighting, our director of photography, who's quite amazing, is very reliant on practicals. Basically, I think in the basement of the house, we had 100 standby lights, floor lamps, table lamps, side lamps. The house wanted to be, in these tones, these earth tones, these dark chocolate tones, ambers, and all of that. So one thing that we had to do for him was to take down the tones of the wallpapers, and we took him down 1 degree, and then he'd come in and he goes, no, we need him even darker, to the point where I was like, well, why do we even have wallpaper? We're losing, the detail of the print, on the wallpaper. But, you can obviously see the print in, the various wallpapers in the movie. But that's one thing. Even I think the day before they moved in to shoot the house, my scenic team was in there still, just painting, just taking the wallpaper down. She was always like, it's too bright, it's too bright.
I think they still came through because one of my questions was the wallpaper. I mean, every room is fabulous, and it really reflects the patterns of the time, and they just seem so appropriate in each room. And they were very much a part of the flavor of each room and the set. So I think the combination of what the scenics did and what your choices were certainly worked. It worked for sure.
Well, that's all Teri.
Yeah, it was I think Aztec, and then I found Aztec for some of the wallpapers, and then I found a vendor that had vintage wallpaper. We got the vintage wallpaper for Ted's room and for Paul's room from a vendor in Iowa or something.
Wow.
And I think she had just enough.
Yeah, the ships on the bedroom wall, and there were some wonderful, wonderful samples there. The clubhouse, was that created at the school as one of your other sets, or was that outside the location?
The clubhouse was one of the third exterior locations for Paul's house, because we had to, well, if you pay attention, when you're in the dining room, there's a door in the wall. So we created that door. We broke into the wall and put the door in because there was no door there. So for the exterior, for the scenes to work where Paul can actually walk out of his house and go to the clubhouse, we needed a house that had a door in the back. So we found this door, which was actually two or three blocks away from the school. But we found, I think we shot that on the last day, or the penultimate day, I think. And we found that backyard maybe 4 days before. And that backyard had an elevated pool. It was all gravel or concrete. So we had to get rid of the pool, then sod the whole place, and then build the house, because we didn't build the clubhouse until we knew where we were shooting, because we had to scale it proportionately to where we were going to plant it. So it happened so fast, the whole clubhouse scene, literally we pulled it together in like 3 days, in the last week of the shoot.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the biggest challenge of this job was the short prep schedule. We had 5 weeks of prep and 6.5 weeks of shooting. So
That's a challenge.
yeah, it was, but it was that was like one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle was trying to find vendors that because we were in the house for 3.5 weeks and I had certain budgetary constraints, I felt like I couldn't rent stuff, dressing for multiple weeks. I needed to buy it, and I needed to buy it fast. So I needed to find vendors where I could just go in and do like a supermarket sweep, because I didn't have the luxury of going from thrift store to thrift store or long drawn out auctions. So I found like house flippers that needed to get rid of stuff. I found estate liquidators. I mean, this is how the bulk of the house was shopped.
Well, you did a great job with that, because there were some things that you found in there that I immediately related to, like the water pick in the bathroom. And we had
I'm
one of
glad you
those
saw
where-
that.
Oh my gosh, there were so many pieces like that that I went, yes, that's.
Yeah, there was a
that's good
particular
choice.
piece in the bathroom that I was really proud of that never, I don't think it made it on camera, but it was the Dixie cup holder.
Yeah, no,
Uh-huh.
it did make it. It did, it's there.
Which I found at an estate sale, and I like ripped it off the wall. I said, I've got to have this. They
Mhm.
weren't selling it, but I've got to have
Right.
it. So I ripped it off the wall and I took it home.
No, but also the curtains, remember the curtains?
Oh, the
in
curtains, that was great.
So I did a little decorating myself on this
Yes.
because we were sort of running out of time. And what's that lamp store in Jersey?
Well, we shot not too far from City Knickerbocker, and went to
Oh,
City
right.
Knickerbocker to go pick out some
Great
floor
source.
lamps. And he came back with a floor lamp and their curtains,
And
basically.
I was in their office, paying, and I was like, can I rent or buy your curtains and I'll replace them? Because they were the perfect curtains with the right amount of dust on them. And so they thought about it for 5 minutes and said, sure.
Mhm.
Teri went by, the next day with a truck or whatever and ripped all the curtains up, and then we recut them, resized them for our house.
And the rug in the living room was taken, I bought that from a house flipper who was getting rid of this wall-to-wall carpeting that had been in this house for like 40 years. So I bought the rolled up, green rug, and I had it cut and bound for an area rug. And same thing with the carpet that we used to put on the stairs to go from the first floor to the second floor. Because you can't recreate that amount of wear and tear, that patina. And so there it was.
Well, James Gray mentions in one of his articles, I guess, that he wanted the film to have a look of films that he was seeing at the time, like 1970s films. So did that impact the palettes? Did he show you any of that kind of research? Tell us about the color palettes, like the public school, which was kind of washed out colors, whereas the private school was more crisp blues and red.
The public school, ironically, the public school and the private school are shot in the same school. This school has about 4,000 students, and it's laid out over like 2 or 3 blocks. It's the biggest school I've ever been to in my life. We were doing like 20,000 steps a day, just walking around, The school itself, for the public school, just hadn't really changed that much. There was all this audiovisual equipment that we had to take down. There were, updates, contemporary, features that we had to remove, but the palette was there, the blackboards were all covered up with, dry erase boards. So we had to take those down to get back to the blackboards that were fortunately still there, and then just all the decorating, Teri just did an amazing job finding all the desks, and the chairs. And then we actually, all the graffitis, that are all the etchings and markings, in the desks, we all did by hand, it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, the desks were a big challenge for sure. I had to get like 60 desks and chairs in like a week or something. But found them in Houston.
The private school, the hallways, like the Harry Potter with the wooden arches and all of that, we used that as the private school. But otherwise the classrooms were updated, they were very modern, like the computer room, this room, exactly, the one where they steal the computer from. We brought in all the, the window cases, and because I needed something that was going to really sort of separate the private school from the public school, and ironically, I wasn't too sure about it, but we were just running out of time, and I was like, okay, as a backup, there's this school and we can get these sort of pine window boxes, bookcases and all this stuff. And I showed James and he goes, no, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. This is exactly like my high school, the private school. So we got really lucky in that sense. And, we just bought everything from there and brought it into this school. And in this school, I got to say, they were just the best. I mean, they were just so helpful. I mean, we were able to drill into the walls. And the school, we did it during, school hours.
The school was in session.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to work around it, but they were really cool. They emptied hallways for us and we were able to store we were there for like 3.5 weeks almost.
Wow. Yeah. How about the great vintage computers? I know how hard they can be to find. When I worked on the Americans and it was early 80s, pre-Macintosh, finding vintage IBM computers, especially in multiples, can be challenging. So how did you manage that?
Well, from day one, I just reached out to Visual Alchemy and asked,
Thank you, Mike Syme.
Yes, and gave them that task. And it, took a good 6 weeks for them to come up with 8 of those. And they just bought them and then we rented them from Mike.
But we did have that one issue because those computers come with 3 components. And remember that, Teri? And they're Apple II computers. And so we got the Apple II computer, the Apple II, that little box on the side, and then the screens. And for some reason, James was like, that's that little box, that little component that came with the computer wasn't the right one. And Teri had done all her research. And what happened is that component came out the year after the
that's
Apple
right.
II. However, it was a component that was made for the Apple II. So for that 1 year, there was another component that was made by a third party. I don't know, it could have been anyone, Panasonic or whatever. But James was adamant that he wanted that one thing. And this was like the day before, we sent him Google pages about how this thing was actually the right thing. However, the timeline, he was right, because he generally was off by a year. And so we scrambled and we got those components and we replaced them. And he was like, see, what did I tell you?
All those details people aren't usually aware of how specific we try to get. One of the key points of James Gray's character, Paul, the young protagonist in the story, is that he wants to be an artist. Did James participate in the creation of any of the art for the film? It must have been kind of fascinating to talk to him about art and then create the class trip to the Guggenheim. What was that like?
Well, I mean, there's this superhero, and so that's there in this image. It's, after he's been to the Guggenheim and he's drawing the Kandinsky when, Turtle or Turkey, whatever his name is, I forget now, had assigned something different. But the other drawing was this superhero drawing that then becomes a painting at the beginning of the movie when he goes into his sort of dream sequence at the Guggenheim. And that's something, James sort of gave us, a rough outline. And then I had one of my scenic artists just draw something up. And then we showed him 2 or 3 options. He said this one, and then we worked on it a little bit more. And then we came up with that. I don't recall James necessarily. I mean, I'm sure, if there's a drawing in the movie, it's because James used to illustrate or draw.
Well, when you switched gears and went out into locations like the street scenes or the family emerging from the movie theater, the boys kind of running away from the Guggenheim, their escape, and the night of the robbery, were there any particular challenges with some of your location shoots?
So we got to this location and we thought, not a lot of it had changed. It still had parking meters on the street. And so we were very fortunate. The marquee was like this. And we scouted it, early in the beginning of the process and liked it. And we were like, okay, we can, there was a pizza store, there was travel agency, there was a liquor store, there was, all these different things. And we're like, great, we got this. The other thing that happened is the marquee didn't light up. And we kind of didn't know that until like the day before we shot there. But if you look at the scene, it looks amazing. I mean, it
Yeah.
really looks good. And then if you cut to the pawn shop, I mean, I saw this place, I scouted this place like a month before we shot there, and I was like, this is perfect. The angle is perfect from, for the vantage points were great. And we found this store. I mean, it wasn't even, it was, what was it? It was a store, but it hadn't been in use. It was a butcher,
It
actually.
was a butcher, yes.
It was a
Wow,
butcher,
yeah.
and it hadn't been, it must have been closed for 20 years. I mean, you walked in there and it was just like, I wanted a hazmat team to go in there first and, air it out and clean it up for us. But they didn't. But Teri did this, and it's amazing.
I love that pawn shop, and I had the internal thought. I know how many sets sometimes we as decorators decorate, and we do the entire store and fill it with so much stuff that never gets seen in the final cut. And I wondered if that was your experience with this set, if you filled it up more than it was, or
Oh.
if you chose just the right things to end up in the film.
Oh, for sure. There was so much more in that pawn shop. Yeah.
It's like 25
That's
feet
pretty
deep of
deep.
stuff. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I'll just say one thing: the big pain in the butt was that we couldn't get the film off of that left-hand window.
Hmm.
And if you had been able to do that, then you would have seen all of Teri's work. If that were a clear window, you would have seen, 25 feet deep worth of everything.
But there was certainly enough to tell the story,
Yes. Yeah.
Just
It
that
kind of
one.
works.
Yeah, it does.
Anyway,
It does for
yeah.
sure.
Adds an element of realness or realism that you might not have gotten otherwise. How about the police station? Tell us about that.
Well, the police station, the lockers that you're looking at there are the lockers of the Bayonne High football team. And their colors, burgundy.
Yeah, burgundy.
Burgundy. And basically what we did is, those are their locker rooms. And what we did is we repainted everything NYPD blue. And then the wall that's behind him, I mean, if there's a wall, a plug that we built, because otherwise you'd see through into another locker. So we did cinder block walls and just placed them wherever. That's in the bowels of the high school. And
Wow.
everything that you see there that's blue is normally burgundy.
It so worked. I mean, the fence with the gate in it that Paul exits when he's gotten off the hook, it just said so much for the story. And you were like, oh my God. Yep, that was a successful set for sure, especially within the confines of this school. Creating it. It totally felt like its own location. Were there any other surprises that you can talk about that popped up?
Every day, yeah, there was, a challenge. Every day is like, Teri, we need this, or Teri, how are we going to resolve this? Teri, did you find this? Teri, and actually there was no surprise, because Teri was like, I'm on it, I'll talk to you later, and she'd hang up.
Perfect.
And I knew I didn't have to worry.
How hard was it shooting in the Guggenheim? Did you have to bring in your own art to clear, or were you able to clear Kandinsky's and any of the other background art? What was that like?
They let us shoot 2 floors, because the top 2 floors, I guess, were still it was pre something, and we could shoot all the art from the top 2 floors would be cleared. And then the lower floors was newer stuff that hadn't reached that, that period yet. So we shot everything. The hardest thing is you couldn't get close to the painting. So, it was like not taped off lines, but almost, no one could go past these lines. You can only get close enough. Only a certain amount of people could be in front of the artwork. We got in there at like 8 o'clock at night and shot till 3 o'clock in the morning, and we got all our stuff. And the thing about the Guggenheim, it's set for, 2-3 things. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed at all, just, some of the benches and the seating and stuff like that. But otherwise, it's the same old Guggenheim.
Did you learn anything that you will take with you going forward from this project, especially both of you coming out of the world of commercials and doing more film? Anything that you'd take away from the making of this film and as a positive experience?
Facebook Marketplace is my friend.
Yeah.
Decorating on the fly can be a lot of fun. I feel like that's what this was. A lot of it, like Happy said, we didn't have a whole lot of time to sit down and really talk things through. We just had to keep moving. And I just had to keep filling up the truck with stuff and have options. And that's how this worked. And I'm much more, I think, confident in my ability to budget.
The challenge of this movie was, I like working under this kind of challenge, when you have to find the things and you're sometimes I just wish, it was a little easier, but it's like, a movie like this, then, you couple that with your personal life, your home life and all of that. It's just difficult, it's not, because you kind of always have to be available, for, to troubleshoot, and to figure stuff out. If you like to work like that, which I do, maybe not to that degree, but I do like to work that way. And it's, it's like when we do a commercial, where Teri and I look at each other, she's playing Words with Friends, I'm doing the crossword, we're talking, we're sitting on apple boxes, and it's just like, and this time, yeah, and this time, when you do this, you just don't have time. And at the end of the day, to be able to do this with you guys and to be able to, see that, they're going to put us up for consideration, and it's just, it makes it worth it, and it's nice to feel like you were part of something that, especially on this movie, that's getting, this much attention and buzz and whatever, I mean, who cares about the Super Bowl spot,
Right.
It's going to play once, you're going to see, the Kardashian running, whatever, it's just not what you want to be remembered by. So what I'm taking from this is that I hope that Teri had a good enough time that she'll do another one.
Well, that aspect of storytelling and applying our creative art to that is certainly what keeps me interested in doing what I do as far as a set decorator. And I think you guys pulled it off wonderfully. And I really appreciate your joining us here to discuss the process and what you went through and the outcome. And, kudos for everything that you put together, and best of luck in the award season. Let's hope you continue to get more recognition.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.